Tomb Raider 2013 Stealth dropped on the eShop last week for both Switch platforms, and it runs at 60 FPS on the Switch too. Let's dive right into this gritty and dark origin story for Lara Croft. Here is my review of Tomb Raider Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch 2. With story, this is the second reboot of Tomb Raider, starring a young Lara Croft that gets thrown overboard during a storm while trying to find the mythical kingdom of Yamatai, having her kidnapped by natives, strung up in a cave, impaled in the stomach, and rolled through rocks, dirt, blood, and skulls all in the first 5 minutes, turning her adventure into a fight for survival. Story-wise, game's great. Lara is developed from a scared history buff to a hardened adventurer out of pure necessity, and the game gives an interesting depiction of Sun Queen Himiko. What I really liked about it was the supernatural elements are given to you throughout the entire plot and not just thrown at you in a huge lore dump towards the end. With gameplay, this is a third-person action game with a lot of platforming and shooting. Being the first of the Tomb Raider Survivor timeline, it took a lot of inspiration from Uncharted, which ironically took inspiration from older Tomb Raider, starting the endless loop and meme of Tomb Raider ripped off Uncharted ripped off Tomb Raider. To start things off, the features and DLC are built into this new release, giving you all the extra costumes, including my personal favorite, Sure Shot. We also have the game's online multiplayer intact and built-in versions of its PlayStation and Xbox achievements. Now, unlike most games of the series, this takes place entirely on one island that Lara is stranded on. Instead of traveling to different parts of the world, you're mostly on a linear path moving from place to place on the island itself, from radio towers to shanty towns instead of going from Tokyo to Cairo. Though you do get a little more freedom later as fast travel unlocks and you get access to optional tombs and collectibles. Instead, the gameplay loop is filled with more survival elements. You still have lots of platforming and climbing in series fashion, but you have to craft your own tools and weapons. Instead of having all ruins conveniently being built with handholds for Lara, you use a pickaxe to latch onto and climb cave walls, making how she navigates a little more believable. You can also grab materials and skill points to upgrade your weapons and give you buffs, like finding more materials when hunting animals or making it easier to fight off strong enemies. Speaking of, combat is something you're gonna really want to like because you do it a lot. The game's primary weapon is a bow, having you collect arrows from nearly everywhere to hunt down animals and fight off human enemies. You'll find a few firearms in your journey as well, but many areas of the game are built around the bow, even having you creating platform tightropes and bridges with it later on in the adventure. The mechanics and gunplay of it is tight and feels great, rivaling the likes of Horizon Zero Dawn for how well the arrow mechanics work. That gets us into the Uncharted of it all. This feels like Tomb Raider with how you climb and the optional tombs you find around the game's map. But there's a lot of that Uncharted big set piece chaos thrown in here as well. You'll occasionally run into situations where Lara is sprinting and platforming across crumbling buildings and environments, or sliding down a hill only to fall into a crashed plane, grab a parachute, fall again, and have a high-speed parachuting glide through the forest, dodging trees just to go and meet her crew at the beach. It's crazy, exciting, and absolute chaos. I didn't mind these sections because they're not always happening and are very adrenaline spiking when they do, but the combat is much more like Uncharted. At the start of the game, you're just fighting small groups of wolves or humans, but once you get to the halfway point, fighting turns into long arena-based battles with enemy waves. This is really the only thing I'll nitpick about the game, as it gets a little excessive. You do get frequent checkpoints, but when you fight off several waves of enemies only to be killed by a dynamite thrower towards the end and have to redo the entire battle again, it feels a bit tedious. Most of the time it's not that bad, but there's one stretch right towards the end of the palace segment that does not let up, and while thrilling, makes it feel a bit too much third-person shooter and not enough action-adventure. Outside of that, the gameplay loop is a lot of fun. You have lots of collectibles to find. The feeling of combat is great once you get the hang of it. The optional tombs have that puzzle feeling that Tomb Raider has always had, and it's all around just a good formula that earned itself 2 sequels. And in terms of content and length, you'll be spending a good amount of time here. I ended up clearing 3 of the optional tombs and reached the credits on the normal difficulty after playing for around 11 hours total. You could probably extend that to about 15 hours by going back and unlocking everything. Let's touch on controls for just a moment because the Switch 2 version added more than I expected. We've got touchscreen support for the map, gyro controls, and they added mouse controls for the Switch 2's mouse function, allowing you to mod sensitivity and use the right Joy-Con like a mouse pointer when walking around and aiming. I was surprised they even added support for this, and it works decently well. The only downside right now is the gyro. It works when you're on menus like the title screen or looking at relics, but there doesn't seem to be any gyro aiming, whether that is due to a bug that will be patched or something else is going on. The mouse mode works for aiming, but gyro currently doesn't. Next up is presentation, and visually it looks good, but it's also a bit strange. This is the definitive edition of Tomb Raider 2013, though it's sort of a mix and meld between the original and definitive edition. We have character models that have the textures of the newer edition, but hair and a few other textures of the environment are based on the old edition. This was likely done to make the Switch 1 version of this game work. I do not own it on Switch 1, but that version seems to target 30 FPS with performance and drop into the 20s quite a bit. The design changes were probably made to make the Switch 1 version work as well as it could. But for Switch 2 edition, performance is great, offering a consistent 60 frames per second whenever you're in control. From the moment she's swimming in the water during the intro to all those crazy combat sequences. The game is a beautiful 60 FPS and it feels great to be able to play it like that on the go. Now there are hiccups here and there, little drops underneath 60 when you go into certain climbing segments, but overall it plays really nice. And it has short load times too. Whenever you fail an encounter, you'll rarely have to wait more than 2 to 3 seconds for it to reload your checkpoint, and booting your save for the first time will only take around 5 to 6 seconds. But that comes at a cost, which was battery life. On the Nintendo Switch 2, Tomb Raider Definitive Edition is only going to last you about 2 hours and 5 minutes per charge. In conclusion, Tomb Raider 2013 is finally on a proper pair of handhelds and brings the crazy, gritty, and supernatural origins of Survivor Lara on the go. Now, the downside, the combat still gets a bit tedious later on, and the gyro currently isn't working for aiming. But if you're okay with aiming with the right analog stick, it plays at a consistent 60 FPS and is a great game to play on the go. Reviews to Go rates Tomb Raider Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch 2 an 8.5 out of 10. If you want more Tomb Raider on Switch, check out my review of 4 through 6 Remastered. And if you like the content, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.